Hey there, welcome back to Farmcraft. I'm John. This is Large Marge, and at the end of the last video, I was just getting ready to take her out and do a little job with her. And sure enough, I sprung a leak in the final drive on the right side, and it was leaking a lot of oil. I can't drive her around like that. So we're gonna tear into the undercarriage, figure out what's going on with that oil leak, get that fixed, and then I hope at the end of this video, we're gonna take her out for a little test run. So let's get into it. That I think is coming out of my final drive. I have not opened this thing up yet. This was on the list. You know, I tracked this thing all the way from the end of my driveway, which is a mile to this point, and I had no problems, no leaks. And now sitting here and I move it a few feet and now it's spewing oil. That is odd. It is what it is. Turn it up to 11. Broke that one off. I want to be breaking all these bolts off. Not a single one of them. Hopefully I didn't overdo that heat and melt hoses. My thinking was maybe someone put Loctite on it and I wanted to let the bolt get good and hot down into the threads. I'm going to try this on setting 2. It shouldn't be hitting hard enough to break anything, but it's not working either. Got one. Wish I knew how aggressive I could get with the heat here. Grief. Doesn't feel good. Margie, I thought we were friends, or at least getting that way. Here, broke number 2. Snap them all off. That's going to be fun. Got that one. I'm going to be breaking this one off too. Well, I didn't melt anything, and it's not leaking from the motor. It's leaking back here, so that could be worse. That's one of the lines. Yeah, it's especially nice now that I see there's no rubber hoses in here. My Yanmar has rubber hoses that come straight into the travel motor. Of course, they come in like that, so heating that would very unlikely to hurt that hose. But when you don't know what's in here, it gets a little nerve-wracking heating things up really, really hot, hearing it sizzle, wondering what you're doing on the inside. That was a lot easier. Yeah, these are all zipping right out. I wonder why those were so stuck in there. Well, I'm not sure what's up with that one. A line rust through or something. That's going to be fun. Always fun, Margie. That's ridiculous. Got a spinner there. There's probably one of those stupid little nuts on a retainer clip behind it, and it has failed, so the nut won't come off, and you can't get behind it. So probably gonna end up having to cut that bolt off. Yeah, it looks like we've got hard line to hard line, so maybe I can get a new one made up or weld it or something. See, one of those stupid nuts with the little retainer clip. The clip breaks, the nut spins. Well, there it is. All right, so I've got nothing but hard line all the way to here, and then it goes up, and it looks like they changed to soft lines here. And there's a giant mess up here. So I need to get all this cleaned out, get that off, and see if I can't actually get these lines off of there. Whew, this ain't gonna be easy. And then, assuming I get this all fixed up, I get to go over there and do that side. I also removed bolts on the other side and in the middle of this plate, but I didn't get them on camera. Whew, good grief. Man, this is a lot of work. And I'm trying to decide what the best strategy is here. Doesn't that look nice? Alright, so this line is the line that goes to the brake. There's a spring brake in there, and that line needs hydraulic pressure to release the brake so that the machine will track. These are the drive lines. This small line here is probably for the high-speed drive. When it gets pressurized, it puts the motor in high speed. And the other line here on top is going to be the case drain. That's going to bring any internal leakage in the motor back to the tank. I think a lot of these lines are probably okay, but obviously there's a concern that the rest of them are about to rust out too. Getting them replaced, they'd have to be custom made, and I don't have anyone around me that makes custom hard lines. Certainly something that could be done, but I'm trying to think of what's the quickest, easiest reasonable repair here, and I'm thinking maybe an attempt at fixing this line by welding it. Another option would be to replace it with a soft line. I can get those. The problem is that a soft line is going to be much larger than this and is not going to fit through any of this system that they have. Could definitely cause some headaches trying to do that, but it is an option. This is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking I need to get all these lines out of here, which that's going to be fun. Get them all cleaned up, inspect them, see how thin they're getting, and hopefully they'll look reasonable and I can prime and paint them and then not let this thing fill up with mud and debris to rust them out, and it should be okay. And hopefully this one I will be able to weld and fix. If not, I'll have to come up with something, you know, maybe one soft line I could get to work in there. But the problem is, you know, these things are set up for these size lines. First step, let's get that line capped so that it quits leaking through my pig mats. Then I'm going to start working on getting these things out of here. The line that's leaking is the one that's harder to get to, of course. But since I'm planning on doing all of these, I'm going to go ahead and just get that out of the way and plug and cap. I think this is the right move. And I've got to deal with these things. Wrong size. Well, we're not dripping like crazy anymore, but I do need to get back in here with a wrench. That's going to be tough. Margie, Margie, Margie. And if that doesn't figure, I could get any one of these off, but this one, there's just no room. I may have to pull that travel motor. Not room for the air hammer either. Here's some behind the scenes footage you guys usually don't see. Sometimes when you're working, a goat walks by. Oh, I think it moved. Move or did it break? Come on. Broke it. And I guess that's no surprise. We're going to have a challenge getting this thing replaced. Well, there you can see where it was leaking. Pretty good hole there. You know, possibly could have welded that, but it's obviously thin. And I hope the other lines aren't that bad. This line is going to get replaced with a soft line. If I could go buy this and it would be bent correctly, I would do it. But I think I'm going to pay a fortune and hours of work when I can just replace this with a soft line. I might have to do some working and how it's attached in here, but I think it'll be fine. Here's the good news, I guess. These lines actually don't look too bad. There's a fair amount of rust. This is the worst area, but pretty thick wall pipes. And the little line actually looks okay. I am going to clean all this rust up as much as I can, and then I'm going to treat especially the pipes with rust converter. I thought about taking the pipes off, but it's going to be a lot of work to get them off, and I'm afraid I'll end up breaking something. So I think the better thing to do is going to be to just work on them where they are. So that's where that tube was leaking, and you can see how its diameter is significantly reduced. But even this, this area of the tube looks bad, but when you look at the cross section of it, yeah, there's actually quite a bit of good metal there still remaining. So I think the remaining tubing is okay. Hopefully I'm right. I am working on getting a replacement line now. While I'm waiting on that, because that's going to probably take a little while, I am going to attack this side. The first one actually came out with a little bit of heat, and the second one snapped off. So did the third one. The fourth one snapped off. But I actually got the last one. Same results as the other side with this panel. These 4 bolts came out, and the last one was a spinner, and I had to cut it off with the torch. Got some oil on that. Now the job is to get these 2 studs out of there. They don't strictly have to come out, but I'll see how bad it is. One thing I could do, I just need a stud, is I could weld on a new one and just thread onto that. All it has to do is hold on a cover plate. But let me see if I can get them out of there, make it the way it was. Didn't weld well at all. Grief. I have to do a whole lot better than that. There you go. So this side, I've got 3. They're all sticking out pretty good. I'm going to heat cycle all of them, spray them down with some penetrating oil, and then see if I can't get them out with vice grips. But if I have to, I'll weld more nuts on. The problem is right now I'm actually running out of nuts. And the vice grips didn't work. They did strip all the rust off of the studs and prep them for welding, just like I planned. Didn't think that felt right. Break it off. Man. God darn it. All right, I can't get it any hotter than that. She's coming. Come on, baby. Out. Man, it is so obnoxious when bolts break off, but I have to say it is somewhat gratifying when you win the battle. This is a worn out Cubitron belt. This is for grinding metal from my 2x72 grinder. And I'm going to string it through. I'm going to be here a little while. Let me put in some earbuds, get an audiobook going. So I should mention, you know, back here actually a lot of this is paint. It's not that rusty, but it doesn't matter. I mean, that's plenty thick. This also, it's a little rusty, but it doesn't matter. I'm gonna go ahead and clean it up too, but it's these pipes that I'm really worried about. I want these hydraulic lines to stay intact. So for the most part, I got all the heavy rust off of there. There's obviously a lot of pitting and stuff. And we are gonna go on to using a rust converter. This converts rust into like a iron phosphate, which is a corrosion resistant material that can just act as a primer essentially. I'm still going to put primer on it, but basically you put rust treatment on it and then you can paint over it. And should be permanently good as long as you protect it from rusting again. The areas where it's still brown, it might look like rust, but that's actually paint. Well, that is the same line. The most difficult one to remove, of course. But it was going to leak soon too. I really, moving it around a little bit like that made it start leaking. It didn't have much left. So I'm going to have to take that one off. Yay. Seriously? That is a fun place to work. So here we are. Rust has been treated. It's all looking pretty good. Make sure I get it as good as I can, and I've been giving a lot of thought as to where to go from here. I really like the idea of POR 15, but it's not so easy to use. It doesn't stick to bare metal unless the bare metal is etched, and I'm not sure how well it's going to stick to this rust treatment. It's a fiddly place to work. I can't effectively get in here and like sand everything and not expose new rust, or it just doesn't seem like a great idea to use POR 15 to me. I don't want to risk it not sticking. And the Rust-Oleum Rusty Metal Primer will stick to this just fine. It sticks to things very well. And if there is still any rust, it will stick to that too. Yeah, I think I'm going to use Rust-Oleum Metal Primer. I'm going to also go ahead and do rust treatment on the cover plates after I get the heavy rust off. time for some paint. We're just doing good old Rust-Oleum brown, and the main thing I want to make sure is that I get back behind all of these. Like this one's easy, I can get right behind it, but these two hard lines are challenging. The soft line moves pretty easy, so I should be able to get that. So I'm going to get those first, and then we'll get the backs of the pipes, and then get everything painted up. All right, we're looking pretty good. Now my areas of main concern are of course right here where the previous one rusted out, and then behind this where it's going to be metal on metal. If water gets in there and it starts rust jacking, and I'm going to try to protect from that. So I'm going to spray fluid film in all of these joints front and back, and then put our holder back on, both of them, and then we'll work on routing our new hose, which is rubber. And I think what I see is it's going to be coming up above here, and you know, I can zip tie it or something to that and just run it that way. Fluid film. It's a tough one. They just don't give you enough room to screw the darn thing on. So there's a fitting here. I think I'm going to have more room screwing that one down, which is a swivel, than this. So we'll do that with a socket. Yeah, so that hose is plenty flexible to be able to make that turn without any issue. So that's good. Now I got to see if I can just get a crow's foot on that darn thing to tighten it. Grief. So surprisingly, just with a regular old wrench, I can actually get in there and snug that up reasonably well. Reasonably well. It ain't easy. But we've got a different wrench with a slightly different angle on the head. So using the two together allows me to really get it. Obviously we'll check that for leaks before we close it up, but I think that's going to do it. Okay. So where this hose is going through here, here, and potentially rubbing up against all of that stuff, I am going to put hose protector on. Looks good. I got to make sure it's going to work with the cover plates and everything once they go on. So now the question is there enough room behind the cover plate for that? But if there's not, I can just bend it. I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's basically that. So yeah, you can see this is right there is really holding it up. If I could actually cut that off, of course it's bolted through that. I can't cut too much. That's not bad, but I think I need to make that a little more gentle. Even with the hose protection on there, it's pretty kinked. Yeah, that's gonna work fine. I like it. All right, we're on the other side. I'm going to put this line in, and I've already cut away that area there and put some fluid film on the exposed metal. So this little adapter has the O-ring, and that's a metric O-ring boss essentially. And of course this thing is directly in the way, because why wouldn't it be? Hard to get that last little bit. Pretty tight. So I've noticed that this leaks right there. It looks like this is an adjustment of some sort, probably pushing on a spring, maybe a relief valve or something like that. I'm not sure, but that isn't leaking. It's not leaking around this set screw here. It's leaking around the nut, and I bet you there's an O-ring right behind it. So I'm gonna pull it off and probably make a big mess, but see if it's something where I can just throw a new O-ring on there and have that thing stop. Wow, it wasn't tight. Good grief. Let me see this one. Yeah, see, that one's tight. I mean, is that all it is? Yeah. Oh, God. Well, that sucks royally. Good grief. So the last person to put that on there broke the bolt. Because I really didn't do anything. It fell off. Ah, bummer. Well, you know, what it boils down to here is the set screw is broken. And it could be a lot worse. It could be the threads in the housing, but it's not. It's the set screw. So that is fixable. I just don't know how much of a mess this is going to make. If I pull this out of here, it might start spewing oil everywhere. I don't know if I can get it out of here. Do I leave it alone and let it weep? Pretty too big. So I have a bolt. I could see what the threads are on that, and it's M12 1.75. So when I get that out of there, I can put this bolt in there and hopefully keep it from leaking too much. And we're gonna make a mess though. So I can measure exactly how far off of the bolt face this is, so I know what it was set to. And basically I think what I'm gonna do is make a set screw just like this. We'll be back in action. like a nylon washer that's cone shaped. The cone was facing in against the housing, and I actually don't think I ruined it. I think I can still use that. Yep. Because of the way it broke, I can put it back exactly like it was and get an accurate measurement. 2.190, and we're sticking out 1.450. So the overall length isn't what matters. What matters is the distance from here to here. I'm pretty sure that's for a relief valve, so that's going to be compressing a spring. This correct as well, and that is 332, and it's 200 long. This is a 12mm by 1.75 tap or die. I want to stay straight. Don't like that. So I'm going to use this flat face of the chuck to hold the die square so that it goes on right. You don't want them going on crooked. And once you get it started, then you can not worry about it so much. So I need a good die holder that I can put in the tailstock. I don't have one, so I'm going to rig it. So this wrench will hold the die, and it's going to run on the carriage, which I can then advance so that as it screws on, the carriage can move with it this way. So this needs to be on this side. Yep. Don't be thinking backwards. Yeah, it's a little scary. What the hell? Well, that's a little faster. Yeah, I have way more than I need there. So up here is going to be the top of the bolt. And now I need to make this step down part there. And I measured carefully from the end to get the cutter right where it needs to be to start cutting in for that little journal there. $368, and I need 332. So let's take off 20. 351. So I am 19 over from where I want to be. Probably doesn't need to be that close. That's 335, and I needed 332. I'll go ahead and cut 3 more. So that level of precision is probably not necessary, but I don't know what this thing is going down into, down inside. It's possible that there's a bore it needs to fit through. So I want to make sure I get it, and that is 332. Now all we need to do is part it off at the right spot. Alright, so parting tool is even with that face, so everything that I move that way becomes part of my length. And I want it to be 2.180, so in order to get that precise, I put a magnetic dial indicator on the ways and up against the carriage here. And then I can just advance. Now this is only a 1-inch indicator, so I can't do it all at once, but I'll do 800 thousandths a couple times. That'll put me at 1.6, and then I'll dial in the last bit to get 2.180. So let's go 8 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there, I've moved 800. Now I can reset the indicator. So let's keep going. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So there I've gone 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9, and 2. There's 2.1, and there's 80. Right on the money. For some support, we are ready to part. Now I'm going to cut part way in, and then I'm going to file a little chamfer into it. So sometimes I find trying to part off the narrow solid stock all the way, I end up breaking that. It'll catch right at the end and break my carbide cutter. So I'm just going to hacksaw that off. .180 is what I was shooting for. What did I get? 2.177. Yeah, so I'm 3 thousandths shy. I don't think that's going to matter. Close as I can tell, this thing is sticking out 330 thou. Since mine is 3 thousandths shorter, what I would be shooting for is 327 thousandths. So that would make the interior dimension, which is what really matters, how far this thing is pressed in, identical. So that being the case, I ought to be able to take this out, put this in, screw it down so it's sticking out as close as I can get, 327, 330, it probably doesn't matter. Put that back on, and I should be able to screw this in. Oh wait, yeah, I know what you're asking. How are you going to screw it in, dummy? Because I don't have a hex head there. Yeah, I thought of that. I'm just going to put a notch in it and use a flathead screwdriver. Should work just fine. Alright, I've got it back on, and I've got this sticking out a little further. In other words, it's not pushing in as far as it will when I'm done. I'm going to measure that to get it right to the right amount. But I can go ahead and screw this back on, and I'm hoping my washer will still seal. If it doesn't, I'm going to have to try to find something to substitute. I suppose an O-ring could do it. It's kind of interesting though, because it's sealing both the nut and the set screw. 330 thousandths. Right at 330 actually. And I'm not going to worry about that 3 thousandths. I don't think that matters. So that's good. It's tight. We're going to wipe the oil off, and this is going to sit overnight. I'm going to see if it does any more leaking. Alright, I'd like to just hook the lines up and test it like it is, but the way the cover plates go on, I kind of need to make sure everything's going to work before I go hooking the lines up. I may end up having to unhook them again and redo all of it. So I'm going to go ahead and put some cover plates on, and we'll see how everything's going to line up. Put little anti-seize on each one of these. Give me a fighting chance next time. Yeah, you can really see how those fill up with dirt. I mean, there's a pretty big gap there. Every time the track's going over, it's going to be dropping stuff funneled right into that point. I may fill that up with some caulk or something just to try to prevent that. There's up here another one of these. All right, I believe that's going to work just fine. Let's get our lines hooked back up. It's a gusher. Making sure that thing's not getting pinched. There's so many gaps here, it just doesn't matter if I bolt those together. If I pull that tight together, it's just a bigger gap over here, so who cares? Okay, we are hooked back up. And before I forget, I am going to reopen the valve for the hydraulic tank, because if I run it with that valve closed, I'll probably ruin the pump. That would suck. So this is under the hydraulic tank and this is that valve. If you start the machine with that closed, it starves the pump from oil and can damage it very quickly, is my understanding. I'm never going to test that, hopefully. All right, we've finally gotten to that time where I'm going to take this thing out and do a job. And you might notice I'm not as excited as you might think. I actually am, but I'm also nervous. I just keep getting so many new problems coming up with this thing. I'm just afraid that another big problem is going to rear its ugly head. And I just don't want that right now. But what are you going to do? We're going to fire this thing up. It's not a huge job, but it's something that certainly my Mini X would never be able to do. I'm going to put this thing to the test, see if any of the stuff that I just fixed is leaking. So there it is. That tree, unfortunately, is dead. It did not leaf out. It hasn't leafed out since the year before last. And that is a sassafras tree, and I don't know why it died. But either way, we're going to remove it. And rather than cutting it down and doing all that stuff, I'm just going to rip it out of the ground. This is all just water. It rained last night, so there's a lot of pockets of water on the machine that end up dripping while I'm using it. And most of what you're seeing here is coming off of the oil cooler and the fan that's under it. So turning while I'm still on my rubber conveyor belts is not a good idea. All right, so I smelled something, and my first concern was the engine being too hot. I immediately checked the belts on the cooling fan, and they're both intact and they're both running fine. It did smell like rubber, and then I determined that this boot is touching that heat shield, and I've got to get that away from there, obviously. So that's the intake air coming from the air filter right here, going into the turbo, and here's the exhaust manifold. They're right beside each other, so can't have them touching. All right, I pushed the boot this way as far as it would go, and then did a little coaxing, and I now have a good, that's probably 3/4 of an inch, 18 millimeter gap there between the rubber and the heat shield. And since I stopped for that, you can see actually it's dropping dirt on this cover plate. I went ahead and put some foam. That's actually like closed cell foam used for insulating water pipes. And I just put it in there to seal that up so that the dirt can't actually get behind the cover plate, at least not much. And yeah, you see how much dirt gets dropped on this stuff. I know this tree doesn't look that big, but it's actually 20 inches across at the trunk, and that's half a meter. And there is zero chance that my other excavator would be able to come up and just push this thing over. I'm just repositioning so that I don't drop it too close to this little tree here. There's really no problem at all for Large Marge on this tree. I'm just getting as much of the dirt off of the stump as I can, and I'm kind of on some uneven ground on the edge of the driveway here. And without a blade, a stabilizing blade like a mini excavator has, it really throws you around quite a lot on a machine like this. That thumb is horrible. It's so short. I can't grab anything with it. Let's try up here. There we go. And so you guys can see this tree is actually, it's about 20 inches across. Looks little on the video, but that's because Large Marge is so darn big. That sassafras root smells awesome. Here, smell that. You smell it? It smells really good. So yeah, I mean, this isn't the kind of machine you want to use doing yard work, that's for sure. I'll probably bring the other excavator over here at some point and grade this out a little bit smoother. But I was just giving it a little test. We learned some things. There's a bit of slop in the bucket, but the thumb is really annoying. The thumb needs to be longer. So yeah, I'm glad I'm checking it out. So we had a successful, I guess we can call that a maiden voyage since the overhaul began. My thoughts on the machine: the boom and the bucket are a bit sloppy, but for the type of work that I'm going to do with it, it just doesn't matter. Maybe I'll get into that at some point, but that is not really high on my list right now. I really need to fix the high-speed drive because it's too darn slow, and this track is too loose. Probably both of them are too loose. I need to fix that, and hopefully the track adjusters will work. Engine ran good. No more smoke after I got the heat shield off of that rubber pipe. No more funny smells. It's disconcerting running this thing full throttle and not having a temperature gauge on it. There's some safety things that I need to fix. I need to fix the oil pressure switch. I need to fix the temperature gauge and the fan belt alarm circuit. And then also the hour meter. All those things are on my list to do before I really put it back to work with any significant jobs. That's why I just wanted to do a little one. But the important thing, looking under here, I'll tell you what I see. Do you know what I see? I see no leaky. So this repair was successful, and we can get this thing covered up. Chase the threads on all these holes. All right, guys, that was a big job. It's done. I'm glad about that. And I really see the design flaw here, the way these tracks just drop stuff right on that gap. I'll make an effort to try to keep this stuff clean, but I think having it stuffed with something to prevent it from just falling right through is going to be key. Well, there you go, guys. More work to do on this old girl, but we are really making progress now. I can actually use the machine without anything really going wrong. Man, when am I going to learn not to jinx myself? The list of repairs on this thing grows ever shorter. The next main thing, though, that I really need to fix is the, well, there's several things, but the high drive, it tracks so slow the way it is. I really have to fix that. So thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. There's plenty more to come. Oh, and several people pointed out that I needed to put a fuse on the solar wire, the positive to the battery. Yes, of course, they're absolutely right. Thank you for reminding me, because if you develop a short anywhere along that circuit, then you could potentially start a fire. And if the charge controller fails and gets an internal short, it's just a matter of time until something will go wrong. So got a fuse there now. Thanks, guys.
Hey, James.
Yeah.
Who are the true heroes behind the scenes?
Yeah, John doesn't do crap around here. It's actually all us. Don't let him fool you.
What does he do?
I wish I knew.
Does he play with toys?
He just plays with his big old freaking excavator and his bulldozers. And then he leaves us a big mess to clean up. Ridiculous.